Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest on Tech Tuesday. But first, we want to give a shout out to all of our sponsors. So stay with us for 3 minutes. That's all it's going to take. These are all great companies. They're companies that you should be using. So here we go. Hey, we want to say thanks to our good friends at Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. You know, Wall of Fame's been helping schools bring their legacy to life for over a decade, but now Beacon Creative takes it to a new level. They're a content creation service that's going to take your data and come up with compelling stories that you can share on your school's digital platform. You really got to see it to believe it. I want you to email John Townsend for more information. You can do that at John, John, at beaconwalloffame.com. Beacon Creative and Wall of Fame. It's a winning team. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Scheduling, rosters, results, facility management. You're going to use Home Campus every day. And I'm telling you, their athletic eligibility and clearance platform alone is a game changer. Go to homecampus.com for more information. I want you to also visit Ohio University and their online Masters of Athletic Administration. My assistant athletic director, along with thousands of others, got his master's through the Ohio program, and it was a great experience. Check out Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. I also want you to go to Gipper, Gipper.com. They are the school marketing platform that's built to save you time. Whether it's social media posts, newsletters, and more, the team at Gipper is going to turn you into a social media marketing guru. Go to Gipper.com. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. We also want to say thanks to Hometown. Hometown continues to be a leader with their solutions that include things like digital ticketing, of course, but how about fee-free fundraising, athletic website construction? Their list goes on and on. Whether it's creating more money, whether it's providing leadership to bring your community together, go to Hometown. As an AD, as a principal, as a coach, Hometown is going to be your go-to shop. That's hometown.com. We also want to say thanks to Booster Hub, the #1 booster club software. Your boosters deserve a platform that's going to help them not just support the booster club, but also support you as fans. Communication, meal fees, sponsorship payments, concession sales. Booster Hub is wired to do it all in their secure system and also keep track of your volunteers, particularly when they change. Check out boosterhub.com and get started. We also want to say thanks to Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your stakeholders, you're really missing out. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's athleticsurveys.com. And we want to say thanks to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Probably one of the best purchases I ever made was our Sideline Interactive indoor score table. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demo today. And as always, don't forget to mention the podcast. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. Our guest today is Wes Simmons. Wes is the president and the CEO of a company called 3D Institute. I'm going to guess if you're an athletic director, you might already be using the platform, or you've heard of it. But we want to take a deep dive into all things 3D. We also want to hear about Wes. So, Wes Simmons, welcome to the Educational AD Podcast.
I've been a fan for a long time, followed you on X, and it's great to connect in person here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, gosh, we appreciate that follow. Let's go and jump right in. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us your quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, kind of take us up through your, career journey that's led to 3D. But what's the Wes Simmons origin story?
Yeah, very good. I grew up in South Kansas City and then went to high school east of Kansas City in a town called Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Beautiful little town. Had an opportunity to play for some transformational coaches there, had a lot of success, won a state championship in Missouri, which was great for us, but as individual players, but for the town, it was really special. And I saw how the impact that made in the community. And really, it was the coach that brought that culture that became a catalytic thing for the community. And so, as a young kid, you experience that, you're absorbing that. You're not really thinking that's what I'm going to seek to try to help coaches do in the future. But that was a part of the DNA that was, or some of the deposits, I should say, that were put into me as an athlete before college. Went to Northwest Missouri State
Oh, yeah.
University, Division II school. Now, they were an up and coming program when I went there. I was a freshman there in 1996. Well, if you back it up 2 years before that, they had a coach named Mel Churchma take
Oh, yeah.
over.
Know
He
Mel
is
very
now
well.
a national good. Yeah, Coach T was my coach, and he took our program from 0-11 in 1994 to 15-0 in 1998. And I stayed a couple more years, and the experience that I had a part of that program, there was a definite it factor. Uh, though I didn't have language for it, I knew that it was transformational. I knew that it was life-giving. I knew that it wasn't going to end. I wasn't ready for it to end. And ended up winning two national titles. My senior year, we ended up losing to North Dakota State in the first round, kind of a devastating blow. I knew the end was coming, but I wasn't ready for that. We had full intentions on a three-peat. And all of a sudden, I was crushed with the reality of who am I now? I've been an athlete since I was 4. And now here I'm 23, 24 years old, facing this question once again of like, what do I do now? This is all I've known. I had declared a major when in physical education because I wanted to coach in college. I really appreciated the experience that my coaches gave me, and I wanted to be a part of that. By 2003, uh, I say it was unexpected. It really isn't. I've always kind of been an entrepreneur at heart, but I got bit by an entrepreneurial bug and decided to kind of pivot away from pursuing after 3 years of coaching at the college ranks. I decided to leave coaching and chase a dream. And I brought that dream to St. Joseph, Missouri, where my girlfriend, now wife, is from. And my dream at that time was to create a professional development platform for coaches. I called it the Coaches Circle originally, but it was very much the idea of, wow, coaches, the power of the whistle. I mean, these coaches have this incredible impact to shape lives. And even as a young coach and an up and coming entrepreneur, I had a lot to learn, but I didn't kind of understand this by watching other programs that most coaches are good people, but a lot of times they will have the least amount of training in the areas that they can actually make the biggest impact. So I was kind of grasping at it. I was trying to put together a professional development site for coaches. And I was kind of, I wanted some first dimension stuff. I didn't have the language at the time, but I wanted some stuff on strength and conditioning and speed and agility and things like that, just to kind of help coaches get better at the physical components of training athletes. But I also knew there was something, there was a mindset. So I was kind of trying to gather sports psychology resources, and I was just kind of looking for whatever. And I also knew there was something deeper though. There was that third dimension is what we call it now, but that heart. And again, I didn't have language for it either, but I knew it was important because I knew how my heart was impacted and my identity and my character and all these things were shaped through this process. So I was seeing it. It was foggy. I started pursuing it, and we did that for we launched that. I built a tech platform. It's Tech Tuesday, right? I built a web-based professional development platform for coaches in 2004. So there's a lot of dial-up internet out there at that time. And, so as a PE major, I was kind of just playing MacGyver, figuring it out. Video-based content in 2004 was sketchy, but I learned a lot. And we grew that thing to, at one point, I think we had about 500 schools probably subscribed. But it was losing passion for me because it wasn't making the impact that I wanted it to make.
You know, I got to take you back to your Northwest Missouri days because while you were there, I was actually coaching just down the road at Marshall, Missouri, Missouri Valley College.
Were you there in 1994?
I was there 94, 95, 96.
Do you know Jason Simmons? Do you remember that name? That was my brother. He played there as a freshman. He blew his ACL out and then ended up transferring to Northwest. But he went from Excelsior Springs to Marshall on a scholarship for football in 1994.
Okay. I was a quarterback coach, so I had a small position group. That name's not sticking out for me. But
He was a
I do.
D-back, and he was there 1 year, so I wouldn't expect you to remember him, but that was a small world moment
I,
there.
I do remember a moment. We were fortunate. We were an NAI team. We were pretty good. Went to the national playoffs. But I do remember in a coaches meeting, it was at the end of the season, and we saw those standings from your conference, and we saw that over season. We're just going, oh gosh, that'd be tough to go through. I think it was maybe 2 years later. I was at the AFCA conference, and Mel Churchman was speaking, and he spoke on his pyramid, and I took that pyramid, that concept, with me for the rest of my career as a head football coach and as an athletic director. So very impactful. I know just what you're saying with the transformational experience. That's very cool.
Yeah, very much. A lot of my drive to want to make a difference actually does come from an experience I had in 1998 when my brother Jason, who started at Missouri Valley, ended up transferring to Northwest Missouri just as a student, was killed in a car wreck. I was a 19-year-old boy. He was 22. And, because of what I would say the family atmosphere with authenticity in the relationships, not just player to player, but the coach to player relationships, the coach to coach relationships, the program to the community relationships. The relational community was so strong that as a 19-year-old boy that had his heart just train wrecked with the devastating loss of his older brother, I was able to find a healing community. And so much of that has become really a driving force of purpose in my own life to pursue this because, I think that by time 2003, 2004, when I started chasing that entrepreneurial dream came around, I started to kind of wake up that not all programs are like this, and every kid deserves at least one 3D coach in their life. Again, I didn't have the language yet, but that's
Right.
the power of language.
Now,
I didn't have the 3D language until about 2010 when I heard Dr. Jeff Duke for the first time.
right. Well, and I'm going to guess the program continues to evolve and be tweaked, probably on an annual basis. I'm curious. You mentioned that growing up, you had you used the word transformational coaches. You had some great coaches. I think hopefully most of us have some great coaches. We also probably have a couple coaches that they inspire us not to do the things that they did as coaches. But at that time, as a kid, was it, hey, this is really cool, I want to be like that guy? Or was it, hey, this is just really cool, I'm having a great sport experience? Were you looking down the road at all back when you were a kid?
No, I've always been kind of a fly by the seat of my pants guy. I never really had a clear vision for my career path. I mean, I started out as an art major one semester. I'm kind of a weird hybrid of athlete and artist. My mom's side of the family's all artists. So I did that for one semester because I had interest in graphic design and just being creative. But what I quickly found out is traditional art forms don't really fit me. I wanted to, that's I think where the entrepreneurial spirit came from, is really just the spirit of, trying to unleash creativity that can create a path for myself. But it was through the experience, especially in college and especially leaving college and having that experience of almost an identity crisis and trying to figure out, okay, what's next? And then because of the reflection I was already going through because of dealing with the reality of death in my life. I mean, all these things kind of came together, and around 2003, 2004, we changed trajectories, and we decided we're going to go start pursuing another path that has eventually ended up as the 3D Institute.
Mm-hmm. Now, in those days, what was, who made up 3D Institute? Was it you and your wife? Was it just you? Were there some others? How did it get going?
Well, I was taking my journey. Dr. Jeff Duke was taking his. So Jeff, at the time, was in Tallahassee. He was a longtime assistant on Bobby Bowden's staff with Florida State. So he had a front row seat to this 3D coach. That, in fact, Jeff would tell you the story of Bobby Bowden when he's a GA coach, pulling his chair around the desk, sitting knee to knee with him, looking him dead in the eyes, going, "Jeff, we got 4 years to change these kids' lives." And he's like, and I need you to understand your responsibility or something like that. And Jeff tells that. So he had those mentors. He had that firsthand view of it like I did, but he was down the road in his career and academically. In fact, he had already done his master's at Florida State. He thought he was done with school. Uh, and then he had an opportunity actually to leave Tallahassee and move to Orlando, Florida, because my other colleague, Mike Millay, who is still with the 3D Institute, hired him away from uh, Florida State and Tallahassee, a very secure environment, to come down and be. He was one of the first employees that Mike Millay hired as he built what is now called the ESPN Wide World of Sports. So Disney Sports Complex at the time, they were about to build what's now ESPN. And they headhunted Mike because Mike was in New Orleans. He had created one of the first sports commissions in America and successfully brought the Olympic trials for track and field to New Orleans in, I think, 1990 or 1992 or something like that. And the economic boom from that event caught the eye of Disney. They headhunted him and brought him over there to build what originally was to be the warm weather training facility for Olympic athletes. That was the original vision. Mike hired Jeff away from Florida State. He moved his family down there, 4 kids, bought a bigger house, make more money, doing all these great things. And then the contract fell apart. And Jeff and Disney ended up pivoting to youth sports, but because of a technicality with the use of the Rings logo internationally and an international trademark dispute of some sort, kind of blew everything up. And Jeff was left waking up at 5 in the morning, crying his eyes out on his driveway, going, why did I leave what I love doing to go chase more money? That was what we call the Kairos moment. That was the epic moment that was a timeout in his life. There was a suburban growth high school being built in the area. And the principal knew Jeff was in the area. So he called Jeff and said, hey, I know you know a lot of coaches. Would you help us hire the next coach? Do you have any time? Well, Jeff had plenty of time. That's the one thing he had at this point. So he said yes. He began looking through the resumes. He came across the name of a coach who was a legend in the state of Florida. He'd won tons of games at the highest class, state titles, kind of a coaching legend. It just was not congruent that this guy was throwing his name in this new startup school's job pool. It didn't make sense. And so Jeff, here's what he knew about him. This guy can win. Probably wouldn't want your dog to play for him. I mean, like very transactional in his approach. Yeah, he can win championship rings, but there's going to be a lot of damage in the process. And at least that was his caricature of him. But I think because Jeff was going through some things, maybe you're just more open, you're open to people's stories. He called the guy, maybe just a sense of novelty. And the guy said, hey, can we meet? I don't know if we can do that. I don't know about the rules of, no, I don't want to talk about the job, says the coach. I want to talk to another coach. And so they both drove about 2 hours and met in the back of a Hardee's restaurant in Central Florida. And Jeff walks in, he sees this guy not living up to the caricature that's been painted for him. And he found out this guy's been on a journey. Yeah, he'd won a couple championship rings, but it cost him his wedding ring. There's 2 grown boys. Won't even talk to him. He was so clear on his goals that he forgot his purpose at home. He'd been battling alcoholism for years, and he's now 2 years sober. He hadn't even been coaching for 2 years, but he's ready to get back into it. He wanted to just meet with another coach saying, okay, how can we do this right? And so that's really where 3D was born, I would say, is in the back of that Hardee's restaurant with a 40-year-old and a 50-year-old coach that both had been kind of chewed up and spit out in the rat race that it can become, saying, what does it look like done right? And so what Jeff did was, he got real excited about it. That coach got the head job. He hired Jeff to be an assistant. And Jeff was full circle back coaching high school football again, loving it, really trying to build it all on a foundation of understanding why they do what they do. And it sparked an interest in him to go back to school and study it. So he called a major professor at Florida State and said, hey, what is it that the greatest coaches do? What's that it factor? Well, you need to come back and study that, she said. Oh, I'm not an academician. Jeff, you would still say that. But she pushed back, said, no, you're asking the right question. This needs to be studied. So what Jeff did is he went back to Florida State, and over really 10 years, he did his doctorate. And he studied what is the role and the impact of the coach in the American context, and what is the it factor. where yeah, they can sustain success, right? They know how to win. They can win those championship rings, but it doesn't cost them the wedding ring. It doesn't, there's balance, there's health, there's community, there's the right culture, it's life-giving, you know, the impact beyond the game. People are calling back years later talking about how this coach transformed their lives. What is that? And you know that didn't exist in the coaching world. So Jeff really did most of his research in the education space, out of holistic education. And what Jeff did was he took the cookies off the top shelf of academia, put it on the bottom shelf for coaches, and said, "Let's make this applied psychology. Let's make this practical for the coaches." And so Jeff uh, studied it, but then he got a degree, he got a grant from the state of Florida to write an undergrad and master's degree in coaching at UCF. And once that happened, then he put together the initial 3D framework and started teaching it at UCF for years and in their undergrad and master's program. Well, somewhere in that mix, Jeff was always connected with area FCA representatives. You know, he was connected with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And so staff over here kind of knew what he taught and said, "Oh, that'd be a good clinic. We come do a clinic." So Jeff would go over here and do a clinic. Next thing you know, this guy said, "Hey, that was a good clinic." He's over here doing a clinic. And so that kind of got that. I'd say that those relationships are what initially got it out of the classroom, kind of out into the atmosphere a little bit. And then by 2010, you know, he's kind of traveling and doing workshops, but that was it. And when people would say, "Jeff, how do I get more of that?" His only answer was, "Well, you got to move to Orlando and join my night class." Until 2010, when he showed up in St. Joseph, Missouri, and I heard 3D for the first time. For me, it was an aha because I'm like, that's it. That gives language to the it factor. I was immediately hooked because first time ever somebody had given language to who Coach T was in my life. He would have self-identified with it. And by the way, I got to go dig that. I got to go ask him about that pyramid because he wouldn't have known about 3D. It might have been a John Wooden pyramid or something, or maybe a Coach T, you know, reconstructing of something. But I'm fascinated about that. I didn't know he had a pyramid. But it doesn't surprise me because the 3D framework described Coach T you know, perfectly. Not in perfection. You know, it's a journey. I'm not saying Coach T was a perfect coach. None of us are. But he was clear on why he was doing it. Him and his staff were fundamentally sound. They had clear and dedicated strategies for the relational component, the social component, the mindset, the motivation, the confidence. And there was always something deeper. There was always a focus on who you're becoming in the process. And so when I first heard that, I'm like, that's it. And then I saw about 150 coaches swarm Jeff after that workshop going, "How do I get more?" And his answer was move to Orlando. I go, "Hey, we need to talk." Because I'd already been building a professional development platform for coaches. He had no vision to get it out of the classroom into the professional and development environment. I had that vision. What I was missing was the 3D framework. So by 2014, we put that together, and now we have a system. We have a system, I would say, using the 3D framework to help not just athletic departments, even though that's our hedgehog, but any organization architect a culture that transforms lives, that's life-giving, produces success and significance.
Yeah, great. You just opened up the door there for a great segue. Culture is something that, you know, coaches, ADs, you know, we talk about it all the time. Oh, they got a great culture there. They've got a winning culture. Oh, the culture really stinks at that organization. But it's that, you know, mystery sometimes is, well, how do you build a successful, how do you build a winning culture? And I was on your website earlier, just, you know, going back and, you know, right there on your homepage, we help leaders create a culture in education that drives success and makes a significant impact in the lives of everyone involved. You know, and you just mentioned you work with leaders, you work with athletic directors, you work with coaches on how they can build their organization's culture. We don't want you to give away the program, but for somebody who might not have heard of 3D Institute, and that's the website, I'll give it out, spoiler alert, the number 3, institute.com, 3dinstitute.com. You know, what is it and why should our listeners care? And listeners, you should care.
Well, yeah, thanks for that, for teeing that up. I'm happy to talk about this. I'm passionate about this. For 11 years now, we've been doing this. We've trained, you know, well over 100,000 coaches in over 60 countries now. It's pretty amazing how what started as an idea in a basement has now is literally has branches reaching around to 60 different countries. And as we've learned over that 11 years, well, first of all, we've learned firsthand what most of us already know. Culture change is slow. It's complex at times. It's, as you said, it's kind of misty. It's ethereal. What do you mean culture? It's this idea. How do you define it? Let alone build it? How do you build with air? That's what it can feel like sometimes because it feels wispy and it feels ethereal. Well, we can what it needs is some bones and a foundation. The way we say it is 3D is a framework for coaching built on a foundation of purpose. Now, the reason it's a framework for culture is because if you can create a coaching culture, coaching coaches creates culture. And if your leaders can sharpen the coach approach to their leadership, or another way to say it is every leader in any organization, a lot of times they wear a lot of different hats, but one of those hats inevitably is this coaching hat. If you are responsible for, if you're responsible for a team of any sort, you need to know how to motivate them. You know how to instill confidence in them. You got to create the right emotional climate. You got to get a group working together toward a common goal. And you've got to help them become the right kind of person in the process and make sure the whole successful drive is driven by the right kind of character and all these things. So, how do you make that look like something is the question. Well, sometimes pictures help. We believe in the power of the picture, especially with something like culture. Things drift to complexity. We got to drive it to simplicity. So I'm not saying that it's this simple, but I'm intentionally saying let's try to make it this simple because I think if you can put some puzzle pieces together, it'll get you a long way in the right direction. 3D is a framework on a foundation. The role of a framework is to give shape to something. So it can take this wispy concept and put some bones behind it. Lots of analogies. I mean, imagine an awning on the side of a building that has a shape to it. Well, what's the shape? It's the iron rods underneath it that frames it out. What happens if you take that framework away? Well, now you got a big pile of canvas on the concrete. Is it all wadded up on the ground, or are you going to frame that up? And so that's what 3D is for your culture. We want to create a framework that meets the developmental needs of your people. So it is the systems and processes and the execution of the first dimension, the skills, the strategies, all those things. But a lot of culture is people. So you better have a framework that deals with the people part of the culture. And the good news is, if you got people, 3D applies because it's not really even a framework for coaching, honestly. It's a framework for humanity. Anywhere there's people, the 3D framework applies because while the first dimension aspects of their job may change, I coach football, I coach basketball, I teach science, I work in HR. The skills are different in that first dimension, but it doesn't matter which department you work in. If you're part of a team, there's motivation, there's confidence, there's emotions, there's strategies to work together, all those things. So those become general across the organization. So the framework applies, but the thing that's important to us, and you said it, it's like, I don't know if you said it intentionally or as Bob Ross would call it, a happy accident, but using the words that I like to hear. We want to help you build your culture, not a 3D culture. Now, what's the difference? Well, here's the difference. A framework could be like an exoskeleton to box you in, right? A turtle has a framework. It's on the outside and it restricts growth. It can feel like you're boxed in by it, right? Well, 3D is not an exoskeleton to box you in. It's an endoskeleton to flesh out. And so it's not a turtle shell. It's more like a human skeleton. And what I mean by that is, if you boil every one of us down to bare bones, we're pretty much the same, right? We got different heights, little probably bone density changes, and female have some slight variations and things like that. But by and large, I mean, we all got two femurs, and we've got a mandible, and we've got phalanges, and you can tell it's a PE major. I'll stop right there before already blowing the dust off that stuff. But anyway, we're all the same underneath, but oh my, when you flesh it out, there's not a one the same amongst us, right? Well, I think the same thing is true of culture. Every culture is unique and different because it's made up of different people, different parts of the country, different traditions, different weather patterns, I mean, just all of that. And it's not all bad and it's not all good. What it probably is organic, which means you get what grows. And what we say is like, don't let your culture be organic. Let's architect that so that you don't get what grows, you get what you build. And if we can help organizations use this as an endoskeleton to flesh out, it becomes their culture with a rigid framework underneath it, allows people to work with it, to add their own flavor to it, to make it their own, yet there's structure to it that makes sure that whatever the outward appearance may be, at the end of the day, we're meeting the developmental needs of our people physically, mental, like in their mindset, socially, emotionally, relationally, I would say, and at that heart level. And when you do that, you have a good culture. You start to have a good culture. But for that framework to be sturdy against pressure, which there's tons of pressure right now, especially in the world of athletics, right? Uh, Changing analogies back to like a blueprint analogy or like a framework of a house. That would be another way to think about this. Uh, a framework, when it's fleshed out, well, that would be all the design features of the home. But there's nothing to design if you don't have the stud walls, right? So you got to get the stud walls. But for those stud walls to stand against a hurricane coming off the coast, well, you better have a solid foundation, right? Or I'm in the Midwest. We got these basements because these tornadoes rip through here. That's what we say as a coach is understanding of why they coach. When you have a foundation of purpose that's solid and a 3D framework to build with, it's an endoskeleton to flesh out, and you can make that your culture. We provide the bones and the foundation. But at the end of the day, we're the guide, you're the hero. We want to throw you the keys so you can run your culture.
I was just going to say that on your website, you talk about the framework, but then you just said, actually, I'm going to read from your website. It's important to remember that 3D by itself doesn't fix anything. Only you, talking to athletic directors, talking to coaches, only you can be the hero of your coaching story. Our role at 3DI is to be your guide on the journey. Talk more about that as we wrap things up about the hero aspect.
Yeah, we want leaders to come alive in their leadership role. I mean, they don't see your position as a pedestal, see it as a platform. We're all chasing success, right? But there's two visions of success. There's the traditional kind of conventional pedestal way where there's like one, room for one. So a lot of times on that path, it's like, okay, really I'm about my self-interest. I'm transacting my way to where I want to be in the future, whatever. But ultimately what we say is, no, if you're in a position of leadership, man, view your position, if it's elevated above others, not as something to lord over them, but as a platform to pull people up on. Because, if you have a pedestal mindset, there's room for one. But if I understand that my job is to use my success for the significance of helping others, well, now I can lift as I climb. My ceiling becomes their floor. Their success becomes my significance. Their success becomes an extension of my legacy, and we can serve our way to the top. But it takes a hero's mindset to do that, right? Because a hero is not about themselves; they're about others. And we believe that if we can get organizational leaders seeing it that it's their job to serve their people in that way, then we are the guide. That's it. We can provide the tools, we can provide the strategies, we can provide the language. That's a big part of it. We want to create a common language in a culture because really your culture, as much as anything, is built with the words you speak, especially in certain moments, right? Like your culture ultimately manifests in relationship. So we got to have the right language, all these things. So we can help with all that. But if you're not willing to take on the role of hero, I guess is the word we're on here, and you shrink back from that, it just doesn't work. I mean, it doesn't work the same. You've got to have those in the authority position bought in and making it happen, and then with that, empowering the influencers, those culture drivers to join them on that journey. So that's really the process that we work with an athletic director is, or a principal or a CEO or anybody that sits in that position of authority that could say, hey, I have the power to make the decision to say we're doing this. That's where you got to start. But we got to work a buy-in process, because if you use too much power trying to make people do 3D, I mean, you just undermine your own cause. So, if there's any ADs out there that are interested in learning more, I would love to invite you into what I call a vision summit. And that's where we say, all right, you're the hero, we're the guide. What is your preferred vision of the culture that you want to create? And then my goal, we call it a vision summit, because at the end of the day, my goal with that would be to capture someone's imagination with a what if. What if? What if this framework could help us do two things? Number one, create a high functioning team. That number two is animated and motivated and driven by the right kind of culture to help us get to that dream, to that promised land, to that dream culture, right? And if that captures the imagination, then we just give baby steps to start moving in that direction with clear off ramps and low investment to work a buy-in process before a larger rollout. So, I can give you that link to put in the show notes if you're interested, and would love to have a conversation with any listener that would like to share your vision and see how 3D can help you get there.
No, absolutely. And that's, again, a great segue. If our listeners want to find out more, listeners, I really think number one, you need to visit the website. Number two, you need to reach out and connect with Wes, find out all the things that they can help you do, help you become the hero in your program. How do they get in touch with Wes Simmons and 3D Institute?
3dinstitute.com. If you fill out any web form on the site, I'll eventually see it, especially if you put my name on it. But if you roll over you can find our team and find my bio. I think all of my information is on there, including email, social media, and phone number.
Okay. And I know you can also find Wes on LinkedIn too, if that's your preferred platform. Wes, thanks so much for sharing. Again, I know a number of programs that have used it and had great success. Your website does a great job of sharing that information too. Listeners, please take the time to reach out to Wes, find out more about the program, and we're definitely going to have to get you back on down the road to do an update.
That'd be great. I look forward to that. Thank you.
For our listeners, we want to say thanks to you and remind you that we upload the Zoom recordings of every interview to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do Tech Tuesday just about every week and just about every day. We try to share stories and best practices from the world of education-based athletics. So please come back and join us again on the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time. Hey, before we go, we want to give a shout out to our sponsors just one more time. Remember, these are all great companies. You should be using them as an AD. Let's say thanks to Home Campus. It's a platform you're going to use every day. Scheduling, rosters, results. Go to homecampus.com. Booster Hub. It's the #1 Booster Club software program. Give your boosters the platform they deserve. Go to boosterhub.com. Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Let them create a custom survey that's going to allow you to take the pulse of all of your stakeholders. That's athleticsurveys.com. Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Beacon Creative and Vital Signs Wall of Fame. It's a great team. Check out Beacon Creative. Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle. As an AD, we were a Huddle school. Go to huddle.com for more information. Ohio University and their online masters in athletic administration. My assistant AD got his master's through the Ohio program. Check out Ohio University. Hometown, digital ticketing, athletic website construction, fee-free fundraising, and a lot more. That's hometown.com. And you need to check out Gipper. Let the Gipper team help you become a social media marketing guru. That's Gipper.com. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.